guys, Julian here, and today I'm super excited to be showing you the much requested how to make synthwave like Truise. So as usual, you get the project file and the samples from this video in the description, and if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there because they'll be available shortly. Let's get started. So we're at 90 BPM. This is a loop you heard in the intro, and the first sound I have here is this chord synth, which sounds like this. So I'll show you the notes for this one first. Basically, it's playing this kind of like big synthwavy style, like epic kind of chord progression where it's going G minor, F major, and then D minor, and then D sharp major. So it's kind of like it's got like that kind of like very synthwavy feel. So the best piece of advice I can give you for these chord progressions is try writing them in like this kind of pattern where it's basically happening over the course of half notes. Like we have this first chord there, and then we have the second chord there, and then we have the third chord there, and then the fourth chord comes in on that little upbeat right before the next half note. But you know, it's basically following that same pattern. But yeah, when you have the chord progression very quick like this, I feel like that really works for synthwave. Like that's really, really good for these kind of chord progressions. And the only other thing here, as you can see, is it's playing eighth notes, so it's going like do 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 like that. And that's pretty much what everything is doing, like the lead and the bass as well. This is another thing. You can have your chords kind of hold out, like if you want to have it just be like something like this. Something like that, but definitely having the eighth notes like that gives it a lot more energy, and you can hear it sounds kind of cool with like the delay and stuff as well. So for the sound on this one, I made it using analog, and what we've got here, as you can see, we've got a pulse wave, I've got a square wave, and then we've got the pulse width up a little bit, and a saw wave. You can see the saw wave is an octave up from the pulse wave. Those are going into a low pass filter, which has a bit of an envelope on it, so that's what's giving it like the pluck kind of sound. We've got a little bit of resonance as well. And then after that, we just have a bit of vibrato and a bit of unison inside of analog to give it a more chorusy, kind of warbly sound. And that's it for inside of analog. After that, I've got a bit of chorus, so here's without it, and then with it. You can hear it makes it so much bigger sounding, and it really helps to tie it together and make it a little bit wider as well. After that, we've just got a little bit of erosion. Here's without it, and then with it. You can hear it's giving us that nice kind of like texture that is really good for synthwave sounds. After that, we've got a bit of echo. I've just got this doing down at eighth notes. You can hear it's going like no 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 like that. That's this. If I turn this off, so I feel like that makes this a little bit more interesting and a little bit more obscured sounding. After that, we have a little bit of reverb, not a whole lot. The thing with Truise's very particular brand of synthwave, and with really a lot of synthwave artists as well, is although we have a lot of echo in here, the reverb is very like kind of subtle. Like you can see, we got the decay time down a bunch, dry wet down a bunch. Here's without it, and then with it. So it's not so much adding like that big spacey atmospheric reverb, and more just kind of adding a little bit of like roominess to the sound. After that, we have a bit of saturation just to kind of beef it up a bit. Here's without it. And then with it, you can hear it's just making it a bit fatter sounding. And then finally, we just have an EQ8 cutting out the low and a compressor sidechaining it very slightly to the kick. So the next sound we have here is the lead, which sounds like this. So this is a pretty straightforward kind of like lead melody. I'll show it to you. It's just playing one of those kind of like very like pentatonic sounding style synthwave type of leads. Like it's just a very particular kind of big lead sound you want here. And yeah, so with this lead, you know, it's really got to shine. If you listen to this without it, but it just feels like a backing track. Like it's not quite the same as when the lead lead comes in. So that's the only thing with writing the melodies for this, is you just want to really make sure it's working really, really well with the chords and all that kind of stuff, so that it's all kind of coming together to tell this one sort of musical thing. And the way that I wrote this one was actually in the same MIDI as the chords. So like I had it like this. Like let's say that's our melody. I did it like that, and then once I had a melody that I liked that sounded good with the chords, then I took it and put it in its own track. So kind of like a good technique for writing those. So for the sound on this one, I made it using analog. What we've got here, as you can see, I've got a square wave, actually a pulse wave, because I've got the pulse width up a little bit, and a saw wave. The pulse wave is an octave up from the saw wave. And then those are going into this low pass filter. So the low pass filter is set like this. We've got the filter frequency there. I've got a bit of resonance. And then we've got this envelope, which has kind of like a nice attack. So this is important for this kind of sound, because what happens here is we have so many things that are doing that same eighth note rhythm. And by having like this one be more of a pluck, and then by having this one have that little like wow into the sound like that with the attack, it kind of like helps to differentiate them, you know, and just helps to kind of put this in a different place in the mix. After that, I've just got a bit of vibrato. You can see it's up pretty high with this one since it's the lead. And a bit of unison, and those are both just kind of giving it a bit of like a chorusy sort of warbly sound. And that is it for Inside of Analog. After that, we have, speak of the devil, a little bit of chorus. Here's without it, and then with it. You can hear similar to the chords, it's just helping to beef it up and give it a bit more dimension. After that, we've got this echo doing 16th notes, a bit of reverb, pretty straightforward stuff there just to give it some space. Then we just have the saturator, kind of making it a bit fatter. I've got the drive up a bit, I've got the bass frequency there. Here's without it, and then with it. And then the last thing we have here is just an EQ8, cutting out the low end, and then finally a compressor, sidechaining it very slightly to the kick. The next thing we have here is this bass, which sounds like this. So what this is it's playing the root notes from the chord progression that you heard a second ago. Yeah, it's just playing the root notes, and then you can hear it's just kind of like adding some low end to it. So that's the key with the bass in these kind of tracks, you know. In some cases, you will write like a bass line to be really out there and in your face, but for the most part, it's just kind of following the chord progression. So for the sound on this one, I made this one using analog. As you can see, analog, very good for synthwave. So I made the sound using two saw waves. You can see we've got this first one an octave up from the second one, and then those are going into this low pass filter. So the low pass filter, I've just got the frequency there, and we've got the envelope like this. That's what's giving it the pluck. And then that is it for Inside of Analog. After that, I've got a bit of chorus. Here's without it, and then with it. So that really helps to give this just a bit more dimension and make it a little bit less of like a flat kind of stale synth sound. After that, we have a bit of saturation, which is just beefing it up a little bit more. Here's without it, and then with it. So you can hear, yeah, it's just adding like a lot more kind of thickness and power to the sound. After that, I've got a little bit of erosion, nothing too crazy. It's just giving you that kind of like crunchy, metallic sort of sound in there. Then after that, we just have an EQ8, which is cutting around, it's cutting at 211 hertz. So it's just to kind of get rid of some of that muddy stuff. If I turn this off, you can hear, yeah, it just helps to clean it up a little bit. And the last thing we have here is just a compressor, sidechaining this to the kick. The next thing we've got here is the kick, which sounds like this. So with these kind of kicks, it's really not so much about like how you process it, and more about the type of sound you're using. And so what I've got here is just like a very punchy, like drum machine style kick, and then it's just playing this pretty simple pattern that's kind of playing off the rest of the drums. You can do a lot with your kick. Like you could have it just be like this if you want. Like if you wanted it to just be like that, you could do that, or you could do like what I've got, like a little bit more of a pattern. But yeah, again, just really simple. And then the only other thing that's on there, as you can see, I did shorten it a little bit with the envelope, and that is the kick. So then I've got the kick and the bass in this group, which I've called the low end bus. And basically what this is we're just taking all the low end elements, so the bass and the kick, and putting them in a bus together and processing them together. And so what you get when you do this is just a tighter, kind of like better sound in your low end. Here's with no processing. And then with it. So you can hear, yeah, it really helps there. So the first thing that we've got here is the Saturator, which sounds like this. Here's with nothing. And then, so you can hear it's just doing sort of like the preliminary, like beefing these up. It just takes them, kind of brings them out a little bit more. Again, without it. And then with it. Then after that, I've got this compressor. And that is doing like the final kind of gluing these together. Basically, here's what it sounds like. Here's without it. And then with it. So yeah, you can hear I've just got the threshold there. It's not doing a whole lot. It's just on like the peaks. But it's taking the level of each of these and just kind of flattening it out a little bit and kind of helping to make them fit together a little bit more. So the next thing that we have here is this hi-hat, which sounds like this. So what this is, it's just like a pretty simple kind of like drum machine type hi-hat, like a very 80s style sound. And what I've got going on here is it's playing this pattern where it's like, so it's playing 16 notes, but you can hear because the velocities are kind of staggered, it's got a little bit of a more interesting feel to it. It's a little bit more nuanced and interesting and subtle than if we just did like this. Next thing we have here is this clap, or this clap and rim shot, which sound like this. So these are basically like the percussion in the track. Like we have the clap doing most of it, and this rim shot just kind of plays off of the clap. You can hear it's just doing that little there. So pretty simple here, just kind of like some extra percussion, you know, helps to break it up, makes it not just like, you know, it makes it not just the same thing over and over. It kind of gives it a little bit more. A little bit more life to the sounds. So after that, we have the snare, which sounds like this. So these kind of snares, you know, pretty simple, just like a big sort of 80s style, like reverby snare. Basically, I took this one, this like really punchy drum machine snare, and then I just put it through a bit of reverb. And there you go, you pretty much have the sound. So then I have all this percussion in a group, kind of similar to how I did the low end bus where I had the kick and the bass together. I've also got all these different percussion sounds together, and it's just helping to kind of tie them all together. So here's with no processing. You can hear it's really not coming through quite as much, but then with it, it's just kind of, you know, taking everything and putting it in the track. I feel like when you put processing on a lot of like dry sounds like this, it's kind of like taking it from being just like raw audio or just like, you know, a very basic dry kind of sound, and sort of like, you know, taking it from the sample pack into your project file, like taking it and putting it into the track that you're working on. So the first thing I have here is this drum bus. So here's with nothing, and then with that. So you can hear this is really helping. It's just fattening everything up a bit. I've got the drive up a bit. I've got the crunch up a bit. And yeah, then the last thing we have on here is just the compressor. So here's without it, and then with it. You can hear this just doing that final little bit of kind of like gluing everything together, just squashing everything down ever so slightly, and tying it all together. So with this one, I've just got the threshold down a little bit, and then I've got the attack up a little bit, so it's not messing with the transients of any of the sounds. And yeah, that is pretty much it for that. And with that, that is pretty much it for this video as well. So, as I've said, that's it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed very much. As usual, you get the project file and the samples from this video in the description. And if you're patient on my Patreon, check there because they'll be available shortly. Once again, if you can make sure to like this video as well as subscribe, and let me know what you think of this video in the comments. I'd love to know what you think of all these new Synthwave videos I've been doing. That's it for today, guys. I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you tomorrow with another video.